Hello, welcome to Through Lucy's Lens weekly videos where I go somewhere interesting and hopefully you will find them interesting too. Now, me knowing the audience I have so far, you are gonna love today's video as much as I enjoyed making it. I'm at Beamish Museum and they have some marvellous examples here of normal people's houses, and you know that is what I like looking at. And we also know that the people that lived in these houses, they were never ordinary, they were always extraordinary along with their story. So I've got two or maybe three houses to show you in today's video. Not going to tell you any more now, but let's go. The first houses we're going to look round today are two examples of council houses. Now, council houses, if you don't live in the UK, are government-built homes that became the hallmark of the British welfare state, particularly after World War II. They're designed to show the comfortable yet modest homes provided for working families by local councils. This was part of a massive housing initiative to alleviate the shortage of good quality housing after the war. The state used new powers such as the 1947 New Towns Act to acquire cheap land for social housing. The Conservative government of 1951 was elected on a manifesto to build 300,000 homes a year. They called these homes the first of the social services. These houses were often called McMillan Homes after the Minister of Housing at the time, Harold McMillan. Almost 1.8 million social homes were built between the passing of the 1947 Act and the end of the 1950s. This is still the pinnacle of social housing completion in the United Kingdom's history. Council houses and council estates still feature strongly in the landscape of British housing, but many are now privately owned due to many being sold off in the 1980s and 1990s under a right to buy scheme. Many curse this scheme for decimating the British social housing stock and selling off public assets into private hands. But let's remain positive in this video and head back to the 1950s. At the time, being moved from a slum clearance to a council house was a magnificent thing. Imagine moving from a house with maybe no running water and no inside bathroom into almost a palace that promised not only warmth and shelter, but a fitted kitchen, an inside bathroom, and reasonable rents for working class people. This also took some people away from unscrupulous private landlords into the hands of the then reliable local authority. What is really lovely about these houses is they're both based on real people and real homes. The museum ran a competition to recreate a home built and lived in between 1950 and 1959. And after a public vote, Esther Gibbon and her daughter Linda Gilmore were announced the winners. Can you imagine having that opportunity? I would have loved to be able to go back to my first home like this. The Gibbons moved into this house in 1952. They'd moved from a 2-room bedsitter with no running water, no kitchen or bathroom. The family said about moving into this house, it was like living in the countryside for us. The small estate was surrounded by farmland. The neighbours on the whole were young families and, like ours, were apart from their extended families for the first time. Almost all the mothers were stay-at-home housewives, and so there was a lot of social mixing between the families during the day. Brenda Gibbons remembered things could have been easier financially, but I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything at the time. We had the things that mattered, and we were really lucky living in our own little palace. The two sisters are still regular visitors to their recreated home, and I can't imagine how wonderful it must be to step back inside your own memories in such a real place like this. I'm really happy that they get to do that so regularly. and also that they get to see other people enjoying their home too. The house is really homely and warming, and it reminded me very much of a mix of both my maternal and paternal grandparents. It's very moving to see family photographs and knickknacks scattered around the place, like the family have just left for a day out and you're sneaking around having a look. The fact these houses are here to see is so important to me. Council houses like this have provided secure homes for millions and millions of working class people for decades. Many working class people have been raised on council estates, my own family included. And we've grown up with a sense of community, togetherness and strength, often not found in other apparently better off communities. Despite the negative and snobbish stereotypes of council estate residents as welfare dependent, criminal and dysfunctional, council estates have traditionally been close-knit communities whose residents are ready to help each other when times are tough. Because council tenancies are secure, low-income people have been able to enjoy the stability of a home during times of hardship. I'm proud to come from this background, and if you're watching this in the same boat, you should be too. This house just felt real to me. Even the bathroom was chilly. Bathrooms in council houses were always chilly, but they were home and people were happy and safe and secure. And that to me is worth more than any mansion in the country. I can feel the laughter and the Christmases and the celebrations and probably a fair few arguments that rang through the walls of these homes. And it just screams out family life for me. You step across from number 45 Rochdale Road into number 47, and this house definitely felt different. This house tells the story of Polish migration to the northeast of England in the 1950s. Following the German and Russian invasion of Poland in 1939, the Polish government, along with Polish soldiers, airmen and sailors, made their way firstly to France and then to Britain, joining the Allies in the fight against Nazism. After the Second World War, many Polish troops who fought alongside the British were unable or unwilling to return to Poland. And in 1946, it was announced that the Polish Resettlement Corps was to be formed as a body of the British Army. Those who fought under British command were eligible to join in recognition of their bravery that they had shown during World War II. Passed in 1947, the Polish Resettlement Act was the first ever mass immigration legislation and allowed more than 220,000 Polish people to either return to Poland or settle in the UK. It also gave them a choice of other countries to emigrate to too. The museum has worked with Polish families on this house to make sure it provides an accurate representation. This house felt a little less homely to me, and I thought a little bit more glamorous initially. I thought it might have belonged to a ballroom dancer, and it wasn't until I looked into the cabinets and saw the Polish language, I saw a connection to Polish immigration. I really did love the living room in this house too. I'm a bit of a sucker for flying ducks. In the 1950s, council housing like this played a crucial role in shaping post-war Britain and our communities, providing affordable, high-quality homes to millions of working-class families. This period marked a pivotal movement in British social history, where housing became a key instrument for promoting equality and rebuilding a nation on its knees. These houses, as well as being really familiar to so many people, I think display this very well. As always, I would love to hear your own stories and experiences in the comments. I mean, just wow. That is the first lot of houses that I'm going to show you. The local authority, the council houses. And the reason I love houses like that and why I'm passionate about them and why I keep trying to find them to bring to you is because this is most people in the United Kingdom's life. We can go to stately homes. I love going to Hampton Court, amazing place. But these places sing to me. These are my relatives, these are my family, these are my colleagues' families. I just think they're wonderful. So that's the first house on this very bumper Who Lives in a House Like This episode. And now we are going to go and look in the houses that were built for someone of a particular profession, because some jobs came with their own house and this job occasionally did. And we're going to go and look around two houses that were made for police officers to live in alongside their police station. Can't wait, let's go. In the 1950s, houses were built specifically on new estates to house the village bobby or community police constables. The houses were rented to the policemen and came as a perk of the job. It also helped the local police to integrate into the community and become a familiar face about town. The police houses at Beamish Museum are replicas of an existing building from the Leam Lane estate in Gateshead. There are two houses interconnected with a police office and front desk around the middle. Talk about taking work home. We enter the first house through the back door, and this house is set like it was lived in by a sergeant and his family. You enter a bright and modern 1950s style kitchen, which is really evocative to a lot of the kitchens I remember as a child. I must admit, I really loved the feeling of this house on first sight. In construction and size, it's similar to the council houses, because we have to imagine that this house was built at the same time as these houses. But it's the furnishings inside where I noticed a really big difference. I looked up a policeman's salary because I felt the furnishing in these houses was quite modern and also quite expensive. In 1955, a police constable earned approximately 55% more than the average working man in the United Kingdom. That salary also came along with the house, or rent in lieu if there wasn't a police house available. And this salary would be even more for a sergeant like who lived in this house. So I guess that gave me an idea of why I could see the modern Scandinavian furniture and designer fabrics that really caught my eye. I really did fall in love with the decor of this house because I like the atomic style from the 1950s and I actually use it as an influence in some of my own home. What struck me was how bright and colourful this house was, with really brave colour choices on the walls, not something I would usually think of in the average British home at the time. I felt like the sergeant and the family that lived here would have been younger, and almost as if a lot of the things I was seeing in the house were wedding gifts. In the centre of the house is the station itself, an inquiry desk and a small police station. The local police team living in a house like this would be expected to deal with all police matters in the community. This included having a regular beat, which means walking around the local area, and they were expected to be highly professional and approachable members of the community. Although we may look back and think life was simpler, on a daily basis, the person that lived in this house could be dealing with a maze of problems, including traffic duties, dealing with drunks or domestic incidents, making sure the local children were in school. They actually used to go door knocking for truants. Lost people, including lost children, attempted suicides, violent robbery, or even murder. In the station itself, I couldn't see a cell or evidence of where there would have been space to keep somebody locked up. I presume for more serious crimes there surely must have been one, so if anybody knows, please let me know in the comments, because I've been going around in circles trying to find out. I also wondered, would you feel safe housing your family in a police station where there could be repercussions? But that's possibly my 2024 cynicism of living in a big city speaking. The house next door is the home of the police constable. It really made me think what it must have been like to live next to your boss 24/7. It's set to be the home of somebody with more traditional conservative tastes, so you can see the stark difference with the tastes of the person next door. I really liked this house as it seemed homely, with the fire roaring, and it was a nice place to sit and settle for a moment, taking in the environment and enjoying all of the lovely things that were around me. Again, I felt like this house was made for entertaining, with a chic dinner service and all the trappings of a cosy cocktail night on the sideboard. You might have noticed that neither house has central heating, and despite their modernity, they were both heated with coal fires in the main living areas, with electric heaters plugged in the other rooms. These electric heaters would have been a luxury, and many on a lower wage would not have been able to afford to have an electric heater in every room like in this house. In these houses, I think you can see some similarities to the council houses, such as lino on the floors and not fully fitted carpets. But rather than seaside knickknacks, which I actually prefer by the way, there are more expensive items of homeware on display, such as a Clarice Cliff butter dish and a midwinter dinner service. These items would be out of reach for a blue-collar working family, apart from maybe a special wedding or anniversary gift. Whereas a policeman, classed as a white-collar worker, had that extra spending power for more expensive things. This can also be seen in the kitchen, with appliances like a Hoover, fridge freezer and kitchen mixers. These things were available to buy on hire purchase, but the high weekly payments and interest rates could easily send a low-income family into a spiral of debt. Low-income families had to be savvy with their money, and like my nan used to say, if you can't buy it cash, you're not having it. Are you Are you ready for house number 3? I mean, this is a first, isn't it? People are often saying to me, Lucy, your videos aren't long enough. Well, I haven't come all this way for a 20-minute video. So, house number 3, and these are miners' cottages. These are houses that were built for retired miners. The aged mine workers' homes are replicas of cottages from Marsden Road, South Shields. They still remain there today. Aged mine workers' homes were some of the earliest forms of social housing, and they helped elderly members of mining communities have a home. The museum worked closely with Durham Aged Miners Workers Association, which was founded in 1898. They worked with them to recreate the lives of residents in the cottages during the 1950s. There have been 4 cottages built altogether, 2 for visitors to look around, and the other 2 are called Clover House, and it's used to provide workshops for people living with dementia and related health conditions and their families and carers. The goal of these cottages was to provide low-cost, secure housing for retired mine workers and their families. The first house is let by a widow, and I honestly found these cottages to be very moving and a really poignant experience. Personal touches reminding you of the difficulties an elderly person would have faced negotiating the new welfare state. There's forms and red tape to access the benefits she would have been entitled to. And I found the addition of the death certificate on the table to enable her to apply for a widow's pension very moving. Her husband died from complications of the lungs and pneumonia. This was common in mining communities for the wife to outlive her husband by many years. Mining was a hard and dangerous job, taking its toll on the body internally as well as on the joints and bones. There are so many touching features of this home, from the memorandum to a lost son during World War I to an empty canary cage. Many miners kept canaries for their ability to warn of noxious gases, but in this case the canary was no longer needed. You could be forgiven to think this house was almost Edwardian in style, but that makes sense to me, the residents being in their old age, so their furniture and precious belongings being from bygone age. The owner's precious belongings are displayed with such pride, and this home held a sense of warmth and comfort as well as sadness. I suppose old age comes to us all, and this home felt packed with memories of a working life well lived. There are a few mod cons in this cottage, but the fire is still coal and needs to be built daily. There is some good news though. These cottages were built with indoor bathrooms as early as 1914, showing the consideration of the Housing Association for the comfort of their residents. As often happens when looking around these houses, my empathetic nature got the better of me in the kitchen and the bedroom, with the larder stocked meagerly for one person and a single bed in the bedroom. I really do hope the residents of these cottages didn't feel lonely in this brave new 1950s world, and there would have been community for them on the doorstep in a complex of houses like this, should they have wanted it. It's been lovely to meet you. Thank you. Oh, I blooming well, it's the best place I've been in a long time. The cottage next door was let by a recently retired couple. The retirement age in the 1950s in England was considered to be 65. Coal mining, however, seemed to age its workers to a greater extent than any other industry. The arduous physical labour had a significant effect on the physique and appearance of miners. Working shifts of usually 9 hours by the 20th century, underground, in cramped conditions, in a damp environment, with the hard physical labour on top. This took its toll. Rheumatism, arthritis, as well as various inflammation ailments such as beat knee, beat hand and beat elbow also affected miners and caused considerable levels of impairment. There were 10,000 cases of beat diseases reported in the British mining community in the 1950s. Of course, diseases of the lungs were also really prevalent, caused by coal dust and damp. This could put men who still probably needed to provide for their family in a difficult position, with no income and no choice but to retire early. Some even ended in a workhouse infirmary. For the lucky few, homes like this provided affordable accommodation once work in the mines was impossible. This house lived in by a younger couple shows a more modern decor, and I also loved the nod to pigeon fancying and keeping, a hobby that's thrived for generations in the northeast of England and was actually the subject of one of my favourite kids' programmes ever, Geordie Racer. Good news, viewers, for in this house we can see the bathroom, and in this cottage it contains a tiny bath. I would struggle to get my leg over there at my age, so I did feel for an elderly resident faced with the same dilemma. I was really moved by these cottages. As someone who spent a lot of time studying the socio-economic aspects of mining, it was incredible for me to see these homes of these people that worked so hard and had genuinely tough lives. We don't often think about after a career, and I think the elderly can be forgotten, even in history, while we concentrate on who's actually bringing home the bacon. So bravo Beamish for this wonderful addition to the museum. I was shocked, I loved it, and I could have happily sat down in front of the cosy fire and enjoyed an hour in here thinking about these residents. Thank you, as always, for watching. What was your favourite house? Every house I've come out of, I was like, yeah, that's going to be my favourite. That's going to be my favourite. No, that's my favourite. They're all different. But I think the decor of the police house is right up my street. And even though it's 2024, I still use a lot of influence from the kind of atomic 50s movement to decorate my own house. But then I love the miner's cottage and I love the story of the council house. So I don't know, let me know in the comments which one was your favourite. I can't wait to hear. Thank you for coming with me. There's lots more coming up from Beamish on different themes. I'm going to show you the whole 1950s village next week. So yeah, wow. Talk about, haven't even got to the, it's nearly 2 o'clock, haven't even got to the Victorian bit. That's how good it is here. But thank you for coming with me. Thank you for recommending it and pushing me up the backside to get here, because it's been beyond incredible. Until next week, I'll see you later.